Welcome back to Beneath the Data. I'm Kelly Beck, and today we're going to be going further into our discussion on sensory needs and how we can better balance those as caregivers. So I wanted to talk to you guys today and about going into those community settings and how you can help structure those type of settings to help your child with their sensory needs. So in our last video, we discussed the coffee cup talk and how we try to balance all of our sensory needs to make sure we're not over or understimulated. So if you haven't watched that, be sure to go back and check that out. But moving forward, talking about we're getting ready for the end of school. And so everybody's days are going to start looking differently. And a lot of times, this is when we really see a lot of sensory needs start to kick up for our children on the spectrum because they go from really, really structured environments. They're in school all day, or they have various therapies, and you go to a much more relaxed type setting. The routines change, or maybe they go from being at school all day to they're at a daycare all day. So there's a lot of things changing, there's a lot of demands changing. So we see a lot of sensory needs happen. So the biggest thing is going into these types of changes is, of course, warning them, talking to them about what these changes are going to look like, but ensure that you also still have structure for your child. So even if they're not in a structured like daycare program, maybe they're going to be home, or maybe you have a child that's still too young to go to school, and so they're home with you already quite a bit. Still have that structure because it's going to give them that predictability that our kids on the spectrum do enjoy. They like to be able to know what's happening and have that sense of structure. So try to have those moments where even if it's not strict of from 8 to 9, we're going to do, this activity, and 9 to 10 is this. Have a guideline where maybe you get up in the morning, you have breakfast, and then you're going to have maybe like a somewhat structured kind of play activity with them. Maybe it's going to be something really hands on. You're going to do some beads, you're going to do some puzzles, something where you're interacting with them. And then maybe you move into an outside time. So, what you're giving them is something that they can still expect. And then you're also balancing that sensory stimulation. You're not allowing for them to be understimulated. We tend to see that a lot in the summer. So make sure you're still giving them plenty of mental stimulation, be it activities, or maybe you do go on a couple of, little field trips to the park for the day, or, to the jump park, those sorts of things. So make sure that that's still happening, and you're going to help better balance that sensory need. Also, we want to think about with our sensory needs, just this overall concept of balancing what we're expecting. So we don't want to have too much happening in a day. You wouldn't want to set up a scenario where maybe you go to a doctor's appointment and then you're going to go to Target and then you're going to go to Walmart and do all of these things and run all these errands. I know as parents, we tend, we have a lot to get done in a day. Lots happening, lots of things to do. But for our kids on the spectrum, they have trouble processing all that information. We're filling that cup up way too fast without allowing for them to have time to better regulate themselves in between. So you kind of want to think about what you have going on for the day. If it's maybe you do have a doctor's appointment, can you schedule that at a time that's best for your child where they tend to be their happiest, based on their sleep schedule or other things that you have going on? And then maybe you don't want to necessarily schedule something else for that day without having time for them to go home and regulate, or go to the park and have some regulation time where we're allowing them to empty that cup a little bit more so that they have room to deal with other things. So, just try to have this kind of thought of what am I trying to accomplish and how can I balance that for the week? What's good days to do things? In my household, Tuesdays and Thursdays are big therapy days for us. So we don't really do anything else on those days. I'm going to try to schedule appointments for one of the other days, Monday, Wednesdays, and then afternoons are better. So I'm going to shoot for afternoons. She prefers to have a lot of sensory time in the morning. So that works better for us. So if you're able, always kind of structuring around their needs for their age is always going to be helpful. Our littles need a little bit more extra room to learn to balance that sensory stimulation. And you want to kind of think about what all am I asking for them to process about their environment. So kind of think with me, if you will, about, the place that you go to the grocery store. Um, there's a lot to process when we're going through this event. So kind of start thinking on your sensory levels. When you think sensory, you think your five senses, and then you do kind of get into those other proprioceptive, vestibular, interoceptive, those other ones. But the biggest ones, if you can kind of hit those five senses, you're going to be helping yourself in that area. So you think about getting out of the car. I'm already trying to think about my safety rules as a child. Am I supposed to hold mom's hand? Am I supposed to hold on to the cart? Oh, there's cars going by me. There's people walking by me. Is it too sunny? Is there a strange smell? Are there, birds around me? There's lots to process. And then we're walking in the store. I'm being hit with air because, that helps keep the bugs out. Then is my preferred cart available? If it's not, then how am I going to process that? And that I need to make those changes. So then I'm kind of thinking in my mind, okay, now I have to think about what is my normal routine for this different cart that I need to ride in. And then we're going into the store and you're being hit with lots of color and smells and people. And people are talking to them. We know all the time, people are just being friendly and they're going to come up and talk to our kiddos, and that's can be overwhelming. So just try to think for a second, if you go into your favorite grocery store, what all are you going to be kind of encountering? Or say, maybe just next time you go, think through that on that really detailed level, and you're going to think about what your child's processing. And so you want to find ways to help them process that information. So take time to tell them, oh, you're smelling something from the deli. They're cooking. Like we cook food at home, they're cooking things. Or, oh, you hear the beeping of them checking everybody's groceries out. And remember, we kind of talked about in the past, that presuming competence. We assume that your child understands what you're saying and talk to them about what they're experiencing, because you're going to be giving it a label. You're going to help them process it better. And just go through that and help them understand. And then also, thinking about your senses, if you know that you're overwhelmed, what can you add or take away from their environment? If it's really, really noisy and that overstimulates your child, can you give them headphones to wear in the store? Or can you give them, if they like to add to their environment when they're, a little overstimulated and they like to play their tablet really, really loud, can you give them headphones that allow for that noise to be right there with them? Or can you give them something that makes noise that they can focus on? If they like to be very tactile and they have a lot of energy, can you give them different kind of fidgets that they can use to help balance all of that energy that they've got from those sensory needs in that kind of environment? So you just want to think about, the biggest thing is, what is it that is either lacking? If it's, they look for that tactile, you need to replace it with tactile. Or maybe they have a need or even a STEM that is maybe not the best for that kind of environment. We certainly don't encourage you to stop STEMs. Kids need to STEM. That is a very important part of that sensory regulation. But can you give something that might be a little better for that environment? If one of their outlets is running, we definitely don't want to do that in a store. How can we get some of that energy out in a safe, appropriate way? Try those different items and see if you can help replace that behavior. So that's a little bit more about sensory and trying to balance those needs. As always, thanks for watching. And if you have other things that you want us to discuss, feel free to give us a comment or send us a message. Thanks for watching.